talking about that. We're talking, but air traffic controllers, maybe in particular, they have to be brilliant with computers, brilliant with graphics. They have to be psychologically really, really smart. And, you know, there are a lot of people that wouldn't be able to do that.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Dana with the Data. So, today I'm going to do a reaction to Donald Trump's press conference yesterday when he was talking about the DC plane crash and accusing DEI being responsible for that crash. I found that kind of odd. Now, I voted for Trump. I champion a lot of things he has done so far and probably will continue to do. But make no mistake about it, I will critique you when I feel as though you are out of line or wrong. And this is one of those times. So let's get into it.
We'll be working tirelessly. He's a great gentleman. The whole group these are great people, and they are working tirelessly to figure out exactly what happened. Ever seen, because this was the lowest level. Their policy was horrible, and their politics was even worse. So as you know, last week, long before the crash, I signed an executive order restoring our highest standards for air traffic controllers and other important jobs throughout the country. So it was very interesting. About a week ago, almost upon entering office, I signed something last week that was an executive order, very powerful, on restoring the highest standards of air traffic controllers and others, by the way. Then my administration will set the highest possible bar for aviation safety. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent, the word talent. They have to be talented, naturally talented geniuses. You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened, because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target, and you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. The FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country, pouring into a little spot, a little dot on the map, a little runway. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan. Think of that. The initiative is part of the FAA's diversity and inclusion hiring plan, which says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite. The FAA website shows that the agency's guidance on diversity hiring were last updated on March 23rd of 22. They wanted to make it even more so. And then I came in, and I assume maybe this is the reason. The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg.
So I wanted to pause it right there and kind of break down what he was just talking about, because if that's the case, first of all, he was reading from articles, and a lot of articles can be fake news, especially if you're not reading the article in its full context.
A real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit. The Department of Transportation, his government agency charged with regulating civil aviation. Well, he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. So I had to say that it's terrible. Then it's a group within the FAA, another story, determined that the workforce was too white, that they had concerted efforts to get the administration to change that and to change it immediately. This was in the Obama administration just prior to my getting there. And we took care of African Americans, Hispanic Americans. We took care of everybody at levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's one of the reasons I won. But they actually came out with a directive, too white. And we want the people that are competent. But now we mourn and we pray, and would like to ask all Americans to join me in a moment of silence as we ask God to watch over those who have lost their lives and bring comfort to the loved ones. And I just want to say God bless everyone in this room. This has been a terrible, very short period of time. We'll get to the bottom of it.
So I will give it to Donald Trump. Pete Buttigieg was a disaster as Secretary of Transportation. Was he qualified? I don't think so, because there were numerous things that happened throughout this nation regarding transportation. One of them, remember the East Palestine, Ohio, train derailment. Those people, listen, the cleanup is not nowhere near complete. Those people never got any money, they're displaced, but they were never taken care of. They were never taken care of. Yes, lawsuits have been filed. And there have been other train derailments under Pete Buttigieg's watch.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would just note the president's leadership has been remarkable during this crisis. We have had a whole of government response, local, state, federal. And when you see that kind of cooperation, it begins with the leadership in this body. So thank you for that, Mr. President. You make our jobs a lot easier. You made an important point that when we deal with safety, we can only accept the best and the brightest in positions of safety that impact the lives of our loved ones, our family members. And I think you make a really important point on that, Mr. President. That is the motto of your presidency, the best and the brightest, the most intelligent coming into these spaces. I want to take a moment and extend my condolences to the families of the loved ones. We commit to them that we are going to get to the bottom of this investigation, not in 3 years, not in 4 years, but as quickly as possible, with the NTSB, who is here today, as well as the FAA. What happened yesterday shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened. And when Americans take off in airplanes, they should expect to land at their destination. That didn't happen yesterday. That's not acceptable. And so we will not accept excuses. We will not accept passing the buck. We are going to take responsibility at the Department of Transportation and the FAA to make sure we have the reforms that have been dictated by President Trump in place to make sure that these mistakes do not happen again. And again, I want to thank you for your leadership, Mr. President, and I appreciate the confidence you placed in me. Thank you.
All right. So He kept going on and on about policies, policy this, policies that. What policies are you talking about? So I want to pull up this New York Times article because the New York Times article is they actually did two articles talking about the FAA policies and the work conditions. This article here by the New York Times, drunk and asleep on the job, air traffic controllers pushed to the brink. A nationwide shortage of controllers has resulted in an exhausted and demoralized workforce that is increasingly prone to making dangerous mistakes. I don't see any diversity here because these people right here look white. Two women, okay, I guess you could say that's part of diversity, and one man. I'm gonna get to the data of the air traffic control a little bit later so that we can see the demographics of air traffic control. But I want to quickly go through this article. It says in the past 2 years, air traffic controllers and others have submitted hundreds of complaints to the Federal Aviation Administration hotline, describing issues like dangerous staffing shortages, mental health problems, deteriorating buildings, and some infested by bugs and black mold. Air traffic controllers who spend hours a day glued to monitors or scanning the skies with the lives of thousands of passengers at stake are at the last line of defense against crashes. The job comes with high stakes and intense pressure, even in the best of conditions. Yet, the conditions for many controllers are far from ideal. A nationwide staffing shortage caused by years of employee turnover, tight budgets, among other factors, has forced many controllers to work 6-day weeks and 10-hour days. The result is fatigue, distracted, demoralized workforce that is increasingly prone to make mistakes. The findings are based on interviews with more than 70 current and former air traffic controllers, pilots, and federal officials, as well as thousands of pages of federal safety reports and internal FAA records that the Times attained. Many controllers are aviation enthusiasts who are drawn to the job because it can pay six figures. Some relish the opportunity to earn more by working overtime. But the Times found that the combination of 6-day work weeks and the round the clock schedules has caused controllers to develop physical and mental health problems. Others resign or retire. Longtime worker controller in Atlanta who said she had witnessed her overworked colleagues engaging in physical fights and making dangerous errors. FAA estimated that more than 1,400 controllers, or about 10% of the total workforce, would depart this fiscal year. And matter of fact, this article was actually published December the 2nd of 2023. So yes, this was under the Biden administration when the New York Times did this investigation, and they said by the end of that fiscal year, 10% of the workforce will be leaving. The current fiscal year, this was in 2023, the FAA sought $117 million to train controllers and hire 1,800 new ones. Yet, training is difficult. Many aspiring controllers fail. The FAA's hiring plan is expected to have a negligible improvement over today's overstaffed levels, with a net increase of fewer than 200 controllers by 2032. The National Airspace System Safety Review Team. So listen, they have a shortage of staff. They need to hire 1,800 people. They need $117 million to train these controllers. I don't see or hear nothing about DEI. It looks like the Biden administration, the prior Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, did nothing. Here's another article, and this article was published the same month in the same year, December 19th, 2023. FAA to investigate exhaustion among air traffic controllers. So this was a problem that went all the way up to Congress. Errors by air traffic controllers have been one major factor. In the fiscal year that ended September 30th, there were 503 air traffic control lapses that the FAA primarily categorized as significant, 65% more in the prior year, according to internal agency reports reviewed by the Times. During that period, air traffic increased by 4%. Drunken asleep on the job. How a series of air traffic control lapses nearly killed 131 people. This is ongoing. The air traffic controller staffing shortage is a real safety crisis, Senator Tammy Duckworth, Democrat out of Illinois, said in a statement following the publication of the Times investigation on air traffic controllers. Senator Ted Cruz, a Republican out of Texas, said in a statement, widely respected aviation experts are warning us that failure to solve these human capital issues could prove catastrophic. And we just witnessed that with the DC plane crashing or colliding with a Black Hawk helicopter. On Tuesday, Senator Janine Sheenan, Democrat of New Hampshire, sent a letter to Mr. Whitaker urging the agency to thoroughly review measures in place to address controller fatigue, burnout, and general physical and mental well-being. So I don't know what article President Trump was reading when he was like, they're going to hire people with mental health problems. The people who we currently have operating air traffic control now are suffering from mental health issues because of the damaging work conditions.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary said about your leadership. From the moment we found out about this, we were in contact with the White House trying to determine exactly what happened. I would echo it as well. No excuses. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We first and foremost, from the Defense Department, want to pass our condolences to the 64 souls and their families that were affected by this. Never should happen. And certainly the three service members, the three soldiers, a young captain, staff sergeant, and a CW2, Chief Warrant Officer, on a routine annual retraining of night flights on a standard corridor for a continuity of government mission. The military does dangerous things. It does routine things on the regular basis. Tragically, last night, a mistake was made. And I think the president is right. There was some sort of an elevation issue that we have immediately begun investigating at the DOD and Army level. Army CID is on the ground investigating. Top-tier aviation assets inside the DOD are investigating, sir, to get to the bottom of it so that it does not happen again, because it's absolutely unacceptable. But I want to echo what the Transportation Secretary and you, Mr. President, said, because it pertains to the DOD as well. We will have the best and brightest in every position possible. As you said in your inaugural, it is colorblind and merit-based. The best leaders possible, whether it's flying Black Hawks and flying airplanes, leading platoons, or in government. The era of DEI is gone at the Defense Department, and we need the best and brightest, whether it's in our air traffic control, or whether it's in our generals, or whether it's throughout government. So thank you for your leadership and courage on that, sir, and we'll stand by you on it. Thank you very much.
Let's pause it right there for a minute. This man, he is Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. I can't pronounce these people's last names. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say Secretary of Defense, Pete. Again, he first started off explaining how it was a typical military routine. But then he ended off saying, we have to do something about these DEI policies, completely get rid of them because it's affecting our air traffic control. So which one is it? Who made the mistake? Are you saying that the DEI policies fell on the era of the pilot flying the Black Hawk? Are you saying the DEI policies fell on the pilot flying the American airline plane? Who are you blaming the DEI policy on? because the military, yes, is under your watch. Why was that Black Hawk helicopter flying dark? That came out. And another thing, do you really think that the Secretary of Defense, the President, Secretary of Transportation is really going to get up here and tell the American people the real reason what happened? Absolutely not. It's classified. However, but they said, let's use DEI as the excuse. Let's blame DEI. DEI did not cause that plane crash. Something else did. And I don't think it was the fault of the American airline pilot. I think it was the fault of the military. Why was that Black Hawk flying dark? Meaning he was off radar. He did not have air traffic control hooked up so that he could hear or see who was else in the air. So I think the blame falls on the military. And he said it, basic routine training, yada, yada, yada. But you're still going to blame DEI. Yeah, this is the same man who reversed the Tuskegee Airmen training. So this is Pete Hegseth. This has been immediately reversed. And after uproar, Air Force says recruits will again be taught about Tuskegee Airmen. Why was it scrapped? Why was it, who in their right mind thought to eliminate Tuskegee Airmen? No, they are not a DEI hire or recruit. Are you kidding me? If it wasn't for the Tuskegee Airmen, World War II would look a little bit different. So the problem that I have here is, do you have common sense people that know the difference between DEI bullshit policies and actual discrimination? Because DEI doesn't necessarily mean a black face. So why would the Air Force automatically go to the black faces of the military and scrap it from their training recruitment course? This is not a black thing. And I'm sorry, but I'm starting to think that some of these institutions are going to make it a black thing. And if that happens, then the Trump administration is going to have a major problem.
JD, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. I just want to reemphasize something the President said, and you've heard from the Secretary of Transportation and of Defense. There really was a whole of government response. We were all on the phone. We were all communicating yesterday, trying to get to the bottom of this immediately, but also try to communicate with the American people about what happened. Something the President said that I think bears reemphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means, on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C. is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control, and we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
The color of their skin, can you tell me what color were they? Who are these people complaining that they weren't getting hired because of the color of their skin? Are you trying to say that they were white? Now, mind you, the reason why I'm bringing up white people is because they're saying FAA, air traffic control, they implemented DEI hiring practices. So they hire people with mental health issues, people with a whole bunch of disabilities, people of color, and they hire them just on that merit and not on being competent. And so now this is why we have this DC plane crash and we have all these issues with air traffic control. But I just read you 2 articles of the New York Times investigating the air traffic control and the FAA, and they said they need more people. They need 1,800 new hires because the workers that they have are overworked, which is causing physical issues, mental health issues. They need $117 million from our government to invest, but the prior administration did nothing. So instead of this current administration complaining about, well, they were all DEI hires, which is BS, how about you look into the problem and invest money in the air traffic control hiring? That's it. It has nothing to do with DEI. Air traffic control never used DEI policies or practices to hire people. They have an 1,800 hire shortage. That hasn't changed in 2 years because they did not receive money to bring new people in and train them. So what's the problem here? Who complained about the color of their skin? Let's be specific, JD Vance. So since he wants to talk about color, let's look at the demographics of air traffic controllers and airfield operations specialists. In 2022, 73% of air traffic controllers and airfield operations specialist workforce were white, of which 18.6% were women and 81.4% were men. Other races that concentrated a significant number of workers were Black at 9.74% and 2 or more races at 9.58%. Blue here is for male, white male. This here is for female, white female. They surpass everyone else on this line. Black men, 2.746%. Black women, Black men, 2,746,000. Black women, 1,269. White women, 5,604. White men, 24,462. The majority of air traffic controllers and airfield specialists, operation specialists are white men. So who are these people complaining about the color of their skin? They're not being hired because of the color of their skin. Is it Black people? Is it Asians? Is it other? Is it American Indian? Because guess what? American Indians is only 95 men, no women. Asian men, 957. Asian female is not even 196. And the other 3,098 men, other female 851. Let's go here to the Hispanics. In 2022, 15% of air traffic controllers and airfield operations specialists workers were Hispanic and 85% non-Hispanic. So, and out of this Hispanic chart, 49%, out of the 15% of all Hispanics, 49 of that were Mexicans, 26 Puerto Ricans, and then you have the Salvadorians, Colombians, Hondurans, or whatever. But they only make up 15%. Again, white men dominate. So I'm trying to figure out here, where is all this DEI? Because this is their diversity makeup. White men dominate the airways. So I'm going to do reactions to the questions that President Trump was asked during this press conference. But I want to say this. DEI was a money grab for corporations so that they can implement training courses to their employees I guess to teach them to be less racist, less bigoted, and not discriminate someone because of their race, sex, sexuality, disability, or what have you. But the hiring practices at these said corporations and institutions did not change. It did not change. You did not see an increase of Black people being hired, or Hispanics, or other. A little bit with women, and that was white women. White women benefited the most from DEI hires, but white men dominate. So I was very disappointed at this press conference to see the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Transportation, the Vice President, and the President himself blame that DC air crash on DEI policies. The numbers do not reflect that. The FAA air traffic controllers, they are in need of $117 million to hire 1,800 people. Did they get the money? Did they hire half of that? And that was under the Biden administration. So the Biden administration, which was toting this DEI BS, they didn't do their job to make sure that we're safe when we're riding these airlines. They had to drag United Airlines CEO who resigned because the airplanes were breaking down. It was a safety issue. So Trump is right. Pete Buttigieg, he was a disaster. But this new Secretary of Transportation, you saying that it's your responsibility, but you're blaming DEI. You can't have it both ways. You cannot have it both ways. I don't want to keep hearing this administration complain about DEI policies. You got to do better than that, because it is going to start sounding like you are racist. Because who are you talking about or being discriminated against? You cannot say white men, because white men are the ones dominating employment in these particular spaces. So let's get to the questions from the press. This part is actually funny.
Mr. President, on DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have. Yeah. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, you mentioned at the top of the briefing that there were several Russian nationals on the flight.
Yes.
Will the U.S. government be willing to facilitate the transfer of their remains, considering
Yes, we
the
will.
fact there is no direct air travel between the two countries?
We've already been in contact with Russia, and the answer is yes, we will facilitate. Yes. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is getting worse, even though President John Lorenzo has been mediating the conflict between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo because he wants to bring peace and stability. The situation is really bad right now. I want to hear from Mr. President if you have any plan in the future to bring peace in the
Well, you're
Democratic
asking me a
Republic
question
of the
about
Congo.
Rwanda, and it is a very serious problem. I agree, but I don't think it's appropriate right now to talk about it, but it is a very serious problem.
You know what? He handled that question very professionally because, girl, this press conference is about the 64 people who are deceased from a plane crash that happened in DC. Why are you bringing up the Congo and Rwanda? That has nothing to do with us right now. So that was inappropriate for her to even asked that question. I really do appreciate his response, but basically he curbed that bitch and was like, girl, this is not the time for that. Yeah, I just found that question kind of odd that she tried to do a sneak attack to bring up something that had nothing to do with the DC plane crash.
Do you even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed? And you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people, you mean the names of the people that are on the plane? You think that's going to make a difference? They are a group of people that have lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question. I'm surprised coming from you. Please.
In other words, he was saying, that was a stupid ass question to ask me, especially coming from you. And if you guys remember, they have bad blood between them. You know, she is a little sassy, feisty reporter. And she's not that good. So that was a stab. That was a personal stab that, you know, he gave her because of that horrible interview she did with him. I believe it was about 2 years ago. And what did he say? That wasn't a very smart question. I mean, listen, that whole press conference, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Transportation, Vice President, and President Trump, they all blame DEI policies. It's like they're talking, you know, both sides of their mouths. Yes, we're going to take full responsibility and make sure that doesn't happen again. And we're going to investigate and let you know what happened and what was the cause. However, DEI policies is to blame. That makes absolutely no sense. You got to do better than that. We are not going to sit up here and tolerate DEI. DEI is DEI fault for the next 4 years. I'm sorry, you cannot. I'm going to give it probably another 30 days for this DEI conversation, and then they just need to put it to bed. So, yeah, and there you have it. Me personally, I think it's a conspiracy on why that plane and a helicopter crash. However, 64 people lost their lives. Have mercy on their souls. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Dana with the Data. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Dana with the Data. Dana with the Data.